I'm Marcus.
38 years old. Married to Amber for almost 10 years. And lately, I've been feeling like a villain in my own home. But before you judge me, or worse, click away, please hear me out. This isn't a story about hate. It's about love. Love stretched too thin. Love that was never mine to begin with.
Let me take you back to how it started.
Amber and I have always been the strong couple in our friend group. Stable jobs. No kids, by choice. A small house with a big yard and dreams of someday traveling the world when we retire early. Amber's best friend Jennifer, on the other hand, didn't have it easy. They've known each other since middle school. More like sisters than friends. Jennifer had Harper when she was just 22. The dad?
Gone before Harper's first birthday.
Since then, it's been just the two of them. Amber and I helped when we could. Holidays, babysitting, the occasional bill. But we had boundaries. Or so I thought. Everything changed the day Jennifer called Amber crying. I still remember the way Amber's face changed as she held the phone to her ear. Something about eviction. A missed paycheck. Harper sick. Jennifer barely hanging on. That night, Amber looked me in the eye and said, "She has nowhere else to go. We had the spare room. Harper could sleep there. It would only be temporary," Amber promised. 3 months max. That was 2.5 years ago. At first, it felt, okay, chaotic, yes, but manageable. Harper was sweet, quiet, 6 years old, with big eyes and a nervous smile that said, "Please don't hate me for being here." Jennifer worked long hours, sometimes overnight shifts. So naturally, I started picking up the slack, making Harper's lunch, walking her to school, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories when Jennifer was working and Amber had late meetings. At first, it felt good, like I was doing the right thing. But slowly, subtly, something shifted. It stopped being a favor. It became a routine, an expectation. Amber started referring to Harper as our little girl. Jennifer would text me instead of Amber when she needed help. I didn't sign up for this, but somehow, I became the fallback dad. And the more I gave, the more invisible I felt. There were days when I'd come home from work exhausted, only to find Harper waiting with a school form that needed signing, a project due tomorrow, or tears over a missing toy. Amber? Still at work. Jennifer? On her 3rd double shift that week. And me? I'd be in the kitchen reheating mac and cheese, silently wondering when I stopped being Marcus. And became dad number 2. I know what you're thinking. Isn't that what good people do? Help those in need. Yes, but what happens when helping becomes living someone else's life? What happens when your own needs are buried beneath someone else's crisis? That's where I found myself, tired, resentful, and guilty for even feeling that way. Because how do you complain?
About a child?
The guilt was the worst part, because every time I felt overwhelmed, every time I looked at Harper and thought, "You're not my responsibility," a wave of shame would hit me so hard I'd lose my appetite. This wasn't her fault. She didn't ask for this life. She didn't ask for her dad to walk out. She didn't ask to move into our house. And she certainly didn't ask for me to feel like a prisoner in my own home. But none of that made it easier. One night, after Harper finally fell asleep, I sat at the edge of our bed and just stared. Amber came in, saw the look on my face, and whispered, "You're not okay, are you?" I couldn't answer right away. I was afraid of what I might say. Eventually, I exhaled and said, "I'm tired, Amber. I'm so tired. I don't think I can keep doing this." She looked confused at first, then defensive. "You mean helping Jennifer? Or Harper?" "I mean raising a kid that's not mine, full-time, with no end in sight."
Silence.
Then came the look. That mix of disappointment and disbelief that told me she'd already taken it personally. "Marcus," she said, "you know this isn't permanent. Jennifer's doing her best." I nodded. "Is she though? Because this feels a lot like forever." That didn't go over well. Amber got quiet, then angry. "You're being selfish." And maybe I was. But what no one seemed to understand was, I didn't mind helping. I just wanted to be asked, not assumed. The next morning, Jennifer casually asked if I could pick up Harper from school. Amber had already promised her I would. I said yes, of course. But that evening, I pulled Amber aside again. "This can't keep happening," I said. "I'm not a backup parent. I'm not a dad. And I feel like I'm disappearing." Her eyes welled up. "Harper loves you. You know that." "I love her too," I said. "But this isn't love, it's burnout." I could tell the words stung. But for the first time in months, I felt honest. Not cruel. Not heartless. Just human. And humans get tired. Especially when they're carrying the weight of 3 people's lives on their shoulders. That night, I sat in Harper's room while she slept, watching her chest rise and fall. She looked peaceful.
Innocent.
And I wondered if, one day, she'd remember me as the guy who showed up when her world was falling apart. Or the guy who walked away when it got too heavy. The next few weeks, I tried. I really did. I picked Harper up from school, helped her with math, listened to her stories about class pets and cafeteria pizza. And every night, I told myself, just a little longer. You're doing the right thing. But inside, something was unraveling. I wasn't sleeping well. My appetite disappeared. I stopped going out with friends. I didn't have the energy. I felt like a ghost in my own life. Amber noticed, of course. One night she sat me down, and with tears in her eyes said, "I'm worried about you. I miss you." And all I could think was, I miss me too. I missed our marriage. I missed sleeping in on Saturdays. I missed the silence of our house. I missed not having to feel guilty for being tired. We never agreed to be full-time caretakers, I told her. Jennifer's family abandoned her, Marcus. What was I supposed to do? Turn her away? No. But maybe she shouldn't have stayed this long either. That was the first time Amber raised her voice in months.
You want to kick them out?
Really? Harper has a routine here. She calls this place home. And that was it.
The Turnin point.
That weekend, I left. Not forever. Just for space. I told Amber I needed a few days to think. I booked a small Airbnb a few towns over. No TV, no Wi-Fi. Just quiet. I sat with my thoughts. And I cried. I cried harder than I had in years. Not because I hated Harper. Not because I wanted Jennifer to fail. But because I felt erased. I wanted to be a husband. A partner. Not a substitute father whose needs didn't matter. I journaled everything. And one line stood out the most when I reread it the next morning. Love without boundaries becomes sacrifice. And sacrifice without recognition becomes pain. 3 days later, I came home. Amber was waiting at the door. Her eyes tired, but soft. She didn't say anything at first.
Just tu guedes-me.
We sat down, and this time, we talked. Really talked. I know you love Harper, she said, but you didn't choose this. Neither did you, I replied, but I chose you. And I need to feel like I still matter. Amber nodded slowly. Then we have to change something. And just like that, hope cracked through the weight. We started small. Amber talked to Jennifer that week. They cried. They hugged. And then they set boundaries. Jennifer agreed to start looking for her own place. Something affordable, even if small. We promised to help her search and even chip in on the deposit. But there was a timeline now. 2 months. That gave everyone time to breathe. I watched Jennifer that week. How tired she looked. How much guilt she carried in her eyes. She was doing her best. But she was also drowning. It made me realize something I hadn't before. She didn't just need a couch. She needed grace. And so did I. Harper, of course, sensed everything. She was more clingy with Amber.
Qui était with-me?
And one night, while we were brushing her teeth, she looked up at me and asked, "Are you mad at me?" I felt my heart crack.
No, sweetheart.
Never. I'm just tired.
Like when mommy used to cry at night.
I froze. She remembered. I knelt down, wiped her chin, and said, "Sometimes grown-ups carry heavy things, but it's not your fault. You are not a burden." She didn't fully understand, but she smiled. And that smile, that innocent, trusting smile, was enough to remind me why I hadn't given up yet. Amber and I started going to couples therapy too, not because we were on the brink, but because we both realized we'd lost track of each other in the chaos. It was the best decision we made. We talked about resentment, exhaustion, guilt, and also about love, patience, and rebuilding connection. For the first time in months, I felt like I had a partner again. Jennifer eventually found a part-time job she could do remotely. She enrolled Harper in after-school programs, so she could have a few hours to work uninterrupted. And she asked Amber and me for advice, genuinely.
I saw her pride slowly return.
Her independence. Her confidence. It was like watching someone rebuild their identity brick by brick. One evening, Jennifer came into the kitchen while I was doing dishes. She looked nervous, holding a folded paper. "It's a lease," she said softly. "I signed today. Move-in date is next Friday." I stopped scrubbing and turned around. She looked almost ashamed, but I smiled. "I'm proud of you." She blinked fast to hold back tears. I wouldn't have made it without you.